For Windsor West.
Thank you, Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise today to debate my private member's bill, the Empowering Homecare Patients Act 2015. This is my first private member's bill as the MPP for Windsor West, and it's truly my pleasure to speak on their behalf to this very important legislation. As a rookie member of provincial parliament last fall, I couldn't believe what was happening when my office was inundated with phone calls from home care recipients and their loved ones in my riding and across Southwestern Ontario. The Erie St. Clair Community Care Access Centre had just announced a 33% reduction of daily nursing visits and was reassessing many home care recipients across the province and deeming them to be in the category of low to mild needs, resulting in a decrease in their service. To make up for the service reductions, the CCAC suggested that family caregivers take all the responsibility for providing care, in one case even suggesting that a patient's wife change his intravenous medications, which includes actions like flushing out the vein. In another instance, an elderly woman who suffered from a significant abscess was told that wound care was something her husband should be doing. To her dismay, the service agency tried to force her husband to clean, repack, and redress her wound. The agency also referred home care recipients to other community agencies, many of which could not handle an increase in capacity on such short notice. All this in order to make up a deficit of over $5 million at the agency. Patients were given little or no notice about the reassessment. In Ontario, you are allowed to appeal a reduction or termination of your home care services, first internally to the service agency and then to the Health Service Appeal and Review Board. It can take up to 60 days for a ruling on the internal appeal, and neither tier guarantees that your services are sustained throughout the process. For anyone with a loved one who received home care, they know that 60 days for a ruling is too long. While some agencies restore services once an appeal is filed, this is not guaranteed, and the appeal system is inconsistent across the province. All too often, recipients in one area of Ontario continue to receive home care services, while people with similar needs in other areas in the province lose their care. In the fall, like the hundreds of home care recipients across Ontario who were also having their home care slashed, my constituents had nowhere to turn. Speaker, I will forever be thankful for the support of my community, as well as my colleagues from Essex and Windsor-Tecumseh, as we spoke out against these cuts together. Many home care recipients and their family caregivers did not want to become spokespeople for this cause, but felt they had no choice. They distributed petitions that were signed by hundreds, if not thousands, of their friends and neighbours in Windsor and Essex County and across Southwestern Ontario. Every day, support poured in on the phone and in emails. Eventually, after months of uproar across Ontario, 80% of the Erie St. Clair CCAC deficit was wiped clean, and the urgency to reduce services was calmed. It was a major victory for my constituents and all those who ever had their home care reduced or terminated and felt they deserved better. The issue of sudden reductions or terminations in home care is not limited to the Windsor area. For instance, from September to December of 2014, over 1,200 home care patients in the Champlain CCAC catchment area were reassessed and more than 500 were discharged as a result. Speaker, my strife is no longer just about these cuts. It's about the way home care recipients are treated across this province and the fight to create a better system for appeals to service reductions. I want to be certain that home care recipients and their families will never be so undervalued in our health care system again. At the very least, they must have access to a robust appeal process that guarantees their service while they are going through a lengthy appeal. Bill 92, the Empowering Patients Homecare Act 2015, seeks to do just that. If passed, the Act will shorten the time period from 60 days to 30 days, during which an agency is required to respond to complaints respecting decisions about the particular community services a person is entitled to receive. Require the agency's response to include information about the process for appealing the decision to the Health Services Appeal and Review Board, and stay the decision of the agency if it would result in a termination or reduction of the community services provided to a person if an appeal of the decision is made to the Health Services Appeal and Review Board. These changes need to be passed today. If anyone in this chamber has a loved one who relies on home care, they will understand that a reduction or termination of these services is life-altering. It's unfortunate that the appeals process in our home care system does not reflect this. Home care recipients need to be informed that there are options when their home care service is cut. They need to have time to adjust to their new service level and/or access to a consistent, cohesive outlet to appeal any reductions to their home care. Our home care system is broken, and structural changes must take place. Bill 92 focuses on just one aspect of a complex system, but we cannot undervalue the importance of empowering home care recipients with access to a robust, consistent appeal process. If Bill 92 were to become law today, the benefits would be clear to home care recipients and their family caregivers by tomorrow. This bill is not limited to the community care access centres, but applies to all approved service agencies under the Home Care and Community Services Act 1994. The bill is a concise, effective way to ensure home care recipients get the home care they deserve that is based on medical fact and patient input. The bill has received widespread support from across Ontario. The Ontario Health Coalition states that it is important that home care patients not be cut off of vital home care services while they make appeals. Bill 92 will make the home care appeals system fair and more just for patients. The Advocacy Society for the Elderly indicates that the eligibility criteria for home care services have become fraught with seniors having services cut back. Due to unclear eligibility criteria, seniors must turn to complaint and appeal provisions under the Act to enforce their rights. The Advocacy Society for the Elderly supports Bill 92 on behalf of seniors. The Ontario Society of Senior Citizens Organizations wrote a letter of support for this bill and encourage its members to review this legislation. Speaker, joining me in the gallery today is a representative from the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario. This organization recognizes the value of the bill and states that patients and caregivers have enough to worry about when appealing a decision to reduce their home care services. It is important to recognize that the current process of appeal adds undue stress to an already stressful situation by removing service during an appeal. The only option is to hire privately to make up for lost services. And that's really only an option for a few who have enough income to do this. Also joining me in the gallery are representatives from CareWatch, who also support this bill on behalf of seniors in Ontario. The organization states that seniors in Ontario need to have access to a high-quality and comprehensive home and community care system. Having a fair and understandable appeal process that does not interrupt the delivery of care is an important component of that system. It's clear that stakeholders in home and community care want this bill to pass. They know Bill 92 is a simple and concise way we can help home care recipients and their family caregivers right now. I know my constituents are not alone in being impacted by these service reductions. Home care recipients across Southwestern Ontario had their services reassessed, just like so many others across the province. I'm sure all members of this chamber will receive calls from their constituents with similar home care horror stories. I'm asking that all members of this legislature support home care recipients and their families today. I'm asking that we recognize that our current system is not working. It's failing home care recipients. Families know that our home care system is not meeting patients' needs. In March, the Donner Report was released, and although there's a lot that I don't agree with, Speaker, it did acknowledge the shortfalls in our home care system and actually called for a timely and transparent appeals process to be included in a home and community care charter. I'm calling on this government to now recognize the value of a transparent appeal process and vote in favour of the bill that is right in front of them. Speaker, we need the Empowering Homecare Patients Act to pass today, right here, right now. I ask that all members of this chamber join me in supporting this important legislation. And Speaker, I noticed I still have a little bit of time left on the clock there, and I just wanted to mention another story that wasn't in my notes here, and that was of an elderly lady. She's in her mid-90s. She had suffered a very severe stroke. She was unable to walk, unable to talk. She couldn't feed herself. She couldn't bathe herself, and she was incontinent. And through the reassessment process, they decided that she was suddenly now low to mild needs and did not require service anymore. And I'm not certain how someone who cannot do anything for themselves could be considered low to mild needs. And in fact, her daughter and her son-in-law, who are seniors themselves, were then put into the role of her primary caregivers. So we're talking about seniors who are then lifting someone in their 90s, someone who's frail, out of a wheelchair to put them into bed at night, or to take them and bathe them, to administer medication to them and to feed them. And during this process, not only were they then in charge of having to care for her on a regular basis, they had no respite. So somebody had to be in the house with the mother 24/7. They couldn't even go out to get groceries because this woman required both of them to be in the home in order to move her from wheelchair to bed and so on. So I'm not sure how families, when something like this happens, how they're expected to be able to go out and buy the groceries that they need, to go to work, to earn the money that they need to earn in order to be able to privately or to get private services to take care of someone. It's quite shameful that somebody that's 92 and unable to take care of themselves, in one of the most extreme cases, would be considered low to mild needs and arbitrarily cut off of services. And I'm happy to report that after standing in this chamber and asking the minister directly why these cuts are happening and being able to name people. It wasn't until I stood up and actually started giving names in cases of those impacted that everybody that we had come forward and allowed me to share their name, whether it was in the media or in here, they had their services restored. But those services could still be cut tomorrow. They're not guaranteed. So we need to make sure that these people understand that they do have an appeal process. They can go to the service agency, not just CCAC, any service agency that provides home care. They can go to that agency, file an appeal, be told that there is an additional appeal process, because right now that's not required, and that if they decide to go to the Health Services Appeal and Review Board, that those services will be reinstated during that time. These are critical services that these people need, and they need to know that they have an opportunity to appeal these cuts and these decisions. Thank you, Speaker.